before we actually start talking about A3, I've been quite encouraged by some of the things that I've listened to over the last couple of days, because it becomes apparent when you start talking about the different cases that people are actually thinking about thinking, and not in all cases, but in a lot of cases. And I think Dan and Jim, when they actually wrote Lean Thinking, hit the nail on the head in terms of what a lot of this is really all about. And you know, to successfully implement Lean, that's really what we've got to do. We've got to understand the thinking behind it. And we've heard lots of examples over the last couple of days of thinking, actually talking about quality, delivery and cost. And actually that logic is about flow of value to the customer. And yesterday Torgeir put us up the underpinning in Toyota's system of two main values: the continuous improvement, which is encapsulated in challenge, in Kaizen, in actually going to see rather than just doing things remotely in a workplace, and also this whole piece around respect for people and the teamwork implications as well. So, so my conclusion, I suppose, is lots of people get into Lean through the tools, and Ian just in his Johnson & Johnson talked about the tools, the system, and then he talked about principles. He had like a circular way of showing that, and okay, yes, the route through into this is through the tools, but if actually you don't understand the thinking, the tools are just tools, and anybody can apply tools and not necessarily get a good result. So if I look at the latest tool that the Lean guys have all got, which we've known about for a long time, but really that became popular once John had launched his Managing to Learn book a couple of years ago, we've really got to understand the thinking behind the back of it. And you know, a bit like Mark's just been doing, I quite like to grasp the situation and find out what's going on. And so one of the things that we've been doing since we developed the A3 workshops that we've been doing is I always ask for people's expectations, and you know, that's really starting point of finding out how they're thinking about what they're trying to do. And I'll kind of stop this now probably, because if any of you come on my workshops, you'll be thinking, well, what the hell's he going to do with what we say? But what I've actually found, and this is Mac to PC world now. I don't know whether SAP can do anything about that, but there used to be some fancy things saying percentage of responses here. But if I look at all the expectations from all the people that have done the A3 workshop, it's quite interesting to actually note that 33% of the expectations are actually around understanding the tool. And actually the tail's a bit longer than this because there's a couple of hundred data points. But there's very, very few people actually saying, I want to really understand the thinking behind this. They're wanting to initially just grapple the tool. And I ask myself, why? You know, is it just a pure, I need to get to grips with the tool? Or is it actually that I've not thought about the link between thinking and the tool? So you know, you know, series of hypotheses. If I apply this tool, will I be able to solve some of my problems a bit better? Is that what traditional managers think when confronted with this A3 thinking technique? If I apply this tool, will it be quicker? You know, this is a lean tool, so it must be better than everything else. We've got this is one I've heard loads of times from the big corporates. We have a tool for proposing the solutions to problems, but this A3 looks a lot simpler. So I'd like to change my tool to this tool. Whether or not to change the thinking is a different thing. So, Dan asked about harnessing the power of A3 thinking. That's what he wanted me to talk about. And I think my number one reflection here is, if you don't think about the thinking and you only think about the tool, you probably won't be able to harness effectively the power of A3 thinking. So that's piece number one. And I kind of thought that I'd sort of interlude quite a deep thought with a bit of comedy, but obviously it doesn't work. So applying the tool's not enough. At best, if traditional managers look at an A3, possibly at best they might see the snapshot of that A3 in a moment in time. I doubt whether they see the progression of A3 as it's really supposed to be used, nor the development of the problem solver, problem consciousness over time, and their understanding of a problem, and nor the management process, the thinking and coaching that needs to take place that goes into the creation of a good A3. Okay? So that's my initial reflection. Because actually, yes, A3 thinking, the A3 is a tool, but it's two things. It's a process for proposing improvements, for managing their implementation, and much more, actually aligning, agreeing, etc. And then it's a tool. It really is a tool. There's a series of boxes. You can size the boxes differently. You can have different formats. But it's really just a series of formats for communicating, for solving problems, for planning out things that you're trying to do in the business. And so the point is, you need both of those thought processes when you start to introduce A3 into the business. It's not just the tool, it's also what's the process I'm going to use to get the best out of this, and what's the thinking that lies beneath the process and the tool. So, why is the thinking really important? Well, it should be pretty self-explanatory, but why is this tool really, really good? Actually, I think there's a lot of reasons why this is very effective, but one of the things that we're all grappling with as in the lean community is what really is the role of management. And there are lots of hypotheses about what management is. But I think one of the things the A3 process does, if you do it effectively, is as a standard process, the A3 makes invisible work visible. Okay, because you begin to see the progression of thought over time, and you begin to see the progression of common alignment, of consistency, and all those kind of things. So if you use it correctly, it should make it easier for you to engage and understand others. It should make it easier to foster dialogue with the organisation. We've been doing this with a board of directors in a FTSE business, and it's been amazing how they've actually crystallised the vital few things that they're trying to do, because one of the things that this does is it forces 5S for information, separating necessary things from unnecessary and concentrating on the vital few. And if you use this properly, the A3 process, then it develops thinking problem solvers, it encourages the initiative at the front line, and it encourages PDCA. If you don't do it properly, it's just a tool. So there's a whole series of links that need to take place between real problems, causes, and countermeasures. And yesterday in the workshop yesterday afternoon, I was saying to the group that I've now been confronted with hundreds of these A3s, and some of them, you have to say, are absolutely superb. There was a guy did the workshop from the criminal justice system, and he was a policeman, and he did the best he was just really was going to the scene of the crime. He broke down the problem. He engaged all of the individual people. Absolutely fantastic, and it has made a massive difference to that relationship between the courts and their police force. Other ones I've seen, and this was the one I was talking about yesterday, was a couple of weeks ago I got back from a project which is actually a supply chain project, and one of the ladies had got her A3, and it was truly beautiful. She obviously done art or something. It was truly a beautiful piece of work. And it's the kind of thing that Leonardo could have done, sort of like in between cutting all those bodies up that we saw yesterday. But it was a truly beautiful piece of work. But actually, as you looked at the logic, all she'd really done was she'd fitted what she was going to do anyway onto an A3 piece of paper. And because it looked so nice, she got away with it. Management thought that this was a beautiful A3, and wasn't that fantastic that you could see all this laid out in one A3 piece of paper, until it came to the questions. Why are you proposing to do this? What other alternatives have you considered? All of these open questions that most managers, in my mind, actually don't ask. They ask a lot of confirmatory questions rather than pure inquiry questions, which actually was maybe why the policeman was so good. He asked lots of pure inquiry questions in his problem-solving process. So I think that, you know, if you can make this whatever you want it to be. It became quite obvious to the lady that actually she'd put all of these things into her A3. It looked great, but actually the thinking wasn't there. But if you do the thinking right, then actually you get good traction on the countermeasures, and you get good countermeasures related, linked back to facts and data, and it should really foster agreement to proceed and engage people in solving the problem, and actually develop learning, because that's one of the key things that we're trying to do. We're trying to learn as an organisation how to improve and how to close our business performance gaps. So I'm conscious actually that I've done 10 minutes without actually showing you an A3. And if many of you might not have even ever come across the A3 process, but you know, for anybody that does come this afternoon to the two workshops we're doing, we'll have a chance to go through that in a little bit more detail. But basically, the A3 is really a story, and what it does is from top left to bottom right, it tells a story about either making a proposal, solving a problem, or even reviewing status. And you know, lots of these. What's important is not the format, but actually that it tells a story, that it engages people, and it aligns people in the improvement activities, and that it's visual and it's concise and it's a representation of what you've gone through to actually come up with the plan and the countermeasures. What's also interesting, and I think John's book really highlights this beautifully. When he was writing the drafts, he'd be sending them backwards and forwards across the Atlantic, and initially, I didn't think that clearly about what he was trying to do until he got much further into the articulation of it with the drafts. But one of the things is it takes 2 or more people to do an A3. There's an author, a communicator, the owner of the problem, who actually has to think about that quite dispassionately and logically. And really one of the things that we're trying to do there is what management should be trying to do is engage those people to get a level of consciousness of improvement, so Kaizen consciousness into the organisation. And then there's a responder, a coach, a manager, who receives the questions, who might be actually responsible for authorising the action, And in their instance, then actually, you know, yes, they should be coaching the Kaizen consciousness, but they should also be trying to make people before making the product or delivering the service. Because one of the primary roles of management is actually to develop people in this system. So I think it takes 2 or more to A3. And the other key reflection that I've got here is that a couple of years ago we did a thing in London, and I said about my daughter. I've got a 9-year-old daughter. In order to learn anything, I think you've got to practice. So, you know, she practices her piano every day, 10 minutes every day. And okay, she might not want to do it every day, but actually that's probably the best. Little and often is probably the better than the night before the piano teacher comes round on a Friday, and you know you're trying to get her to do all these fingering exercises that she should have been practicing all week. And so, you know, if you want to learn A3, I don't think you can just read the book and do a workshop and get a badge, get the certificate. I actually think this is like all of the lean stuff. It's an experiential thing. It takes time. It's very, very difficult when you're confronted with that blank A3 sheet of paper and you're trying to solve the problem to actually start and write that down. And if you really want to think about learning by doing, actually you should do this based on the business problems that you've got. You know, so do it based on need, and really think about this at each level of the company, in each activity in the company in real time and at the root cause. I think we were talking about this yesterday, at the real place to see the real thing, to understand the real fact, to address real problems. Yeah, so that's where this technique is best applied. The other thing is that I think one of the things that we should be actually consciously thinking of is what the pattern or routine we actually need in order to sustain a lot of this stuff. So can we openly, consciously think about the patterns and routines that are required to solve problems effectively? And I think Mike Rother's done a very, very good job in this book of explaining some of Toyota's routines for improvements, you know, and he kind of goes through a whole series of things which I'll let you read. But I think one of my thought processes here is, how do you develop your own organisation's pattern and routine for improvement? Can you do that? What would it take to do that? So that's you know, that's another key piece of that. And then my last thought here, and when I'm confronted with people saying I want to apply A3, and I ask them what problem they're trying to solve by doing that, most of the time I don't really think they've thought that deeply about it. They're just thinking about, yes, it's another tool to add to the toolkit. I'm sure it'll help me, and I just need to get going with it. But maybe, and this is probably the only thing that I would say it's as close to a suggestion as you're going to get from me today. What I would say is, when you're thinking about applying A3 thinking, can you apply the problem-solving approach to the thought of applying it? Because actually applying it is a countermeasure. That's, you know, it's a countermeasure to a series of problems. So what really are the problems? So clarify the problem that you're trying to solve, think about what the gap is, then you'll end up with a problem. And then break down that problem so that you get to root cause. Set a target, ask yourselves why, get to a root cause, develop some countermeasures, plan those out, see those through, monitor the results, and then standardise it. And that's basically our improvement logic, I think, of problem solving. And try and think about that with reference to how you might start to use the A3 more effectively. So to summarise just few questions. How can you use this tool to develop the understanding of both the process and the tool? How do you use A3 to develop the problem-solving capabilities of everybody in the organisation? So make people conscious of the problems that exist in your organisation. How do you use this tool to develop your management capabilities, making invisible work visible, and consciousness of the management process, the thinking and the coaching that goes on to solve the problems? How do you ensure that you focus on the vital few? Okay? And I'll leave you with that thought.